Not that India is better for astrology. The only difference is in the Western world, most of the astrological knowledge was destroyed. When they burnt the Library of Alexandria and when the Christians came through and all this other stuff, that didn't happen in India. In India is the biggest library of occult knowledge. And that's what's special about India. It's not that the Indians knew better. The Indians, the Arabs, and Greeks, they were trading astrology 2,000 years ago.
Some of the authors said that the Western astrologers haven't accounted for the precession of the equinox.
Yeah.
Could you explain the differences between Western and Eastern astrology? And if that's correct about the equinox, maybe you can dial us in on that.
First of all, that's not a difference between Western and Eastern astrology. Most people think it is, and it's commonly called the difference between Eastern and Western. The reason is because the majority of Indian astrologers from India use what's called the sidereal zodiac, and the majority of Western astrologers use the tropical zodiac, okay?
Right.
Now, your sun sign that everyone knows is based on the tropical zodiac, okay? Now, the sidereal zodiac is about 23 degrees different. So basically, you'd have to subtract 23 degrees from your sun. So usually with the sidereal zodiac, your sun sign is the previous sign.
Right.
Okay.
Maybe you can just back up one step and clear us on exactly the meaning of the zodiac. I know I'm imagining you're talking about the constellations of the zodiac, the 12 constellations. What's the difference between the sidereal and the other one?
Okay. So the sidereal, what they do is the idea is that the constellations are related to the stars. The tropical holds the idea that the zodiac, the 12 signs of the zodiac, are related to the Earth's sphere and the movement of the sun. So basically, one idea is there's a star there, and that star is Gemini. And that group of stars is Scorpio, okay? That's the sidereal idea.
Okay.
And we put our planets are considered in those star groups. The tropical idea is that if we imagine we have the Earth, and the Earth has an equator.
Yes.
And the sun moves like this around the Earth. The sun doesn't move like this. It moves at an angle around the Earth. So it comes in, as it moves north, the sun crosses the equator. Then it gets to a point of highest north, which is the Tropic of Cancer. And then it drops south and crosses the equator again. So the tropical zodiac is the idea that where the sun crosses the equator, that's the beginning of Aries and the beginning of Libra. So the signs of the zodiac are relevant to the sun-earth movement, okay?
Okay.
Now, in India, most people use the sidereal zodiac, and in the West, most people use the tropical. But there's a lot of astrologers in the West that use the sidereal, and there's a lot of astrologers in India, some, not a lot, not a majority, but there's some that use the tropical. And this debate on what zodiac is correct has been going on for more than 2,000 years. It's been going on in every country that ever did astrology. In fact, if we read Ptolemy's astrology books, he talks about both of those zodiacs, plus another one that the Greeks were using at the time, trying to figure out which is right. One of the biggest problems we have in astrology is that there's no agreement on which way to even calculate the zodiac, not even within Indian astrologers or not even within Western astrologers, okay? So there's a lot of reasons for that, which I don't want to get into because they're very technical and historically. But one thing I will say is that the name of the stars, Aries, Taurus, constellations, as we see in our astronomical almanacs in these days, those names of the stars were created by the Greeks around 300 BC. Before that, those stars were never called that.
That's interesting.
In all ancient cultures, those stars had different names. And there was more this specific star and maybe a couple group stars around it. And like if we look at the constellation Scorpio, it's way more than 30 degrees long. The idea is if you have 360 degrees of circle, you divide it by 12, you have 12 30-degree signs. But the reality is Aries is like a little tiny piece of pizza,
Right.
And Scorpio is like this huge pizza that I want to eat,
Uh-huh.
And so the idea that these stars are certain constellations, they don't even fit into the constellational space when we use the sidereal zodiac. Now, I personally do not believe in the sidereal zodiac. I used to. But then when I started reading the ancient books from India, there was more evidence in those ancient books that the Indian astrologers used the tropical zodiac. So I tested every technique I had learned, and every single technique tested out better with the tropical zodiac. So at that point, I completely divorced myself from the sidereal zodiac, and I've been using the tropical. So, but the main thing is the techniques. The biggest difference between Western astrology and Eastern astrology is the techniques. Western astrology uses techniques that are based on Persian and Greek astrology. Vedic astrology uses techniques that are completely different. We have different aspects. We have different ways we look at the charts. We take different divisions of the charts. We have, if I printed out your entire Vedic astrology report of what I printed, of what I programmed so far, I'm going to give you a big stack of paper. I'm going to give you 20 times as many pieces of paper as you're going to get with calculating everything that Western astrologers use. There's just so much more. And it's not that India is better for astrology. The only difference is in the Western world, most of the astrological knowledge was destroyed.
Right.
When they burnt the Library of Alexandria and when the Christians came through and all this other stuff, that didn't happen in India. In India is the biggest library of occult knowledge. And that's what's special about India. It's not that the Indians knew better. The Indians, the Arabs, and Greeks, they were trading astrology 2,000 years ago. But what happened is all the astronomical and astral knowledge in the West got so destroyed. India never lost the knowledge that the Earth was round. I have books from 1,500 years ago that talk, older than that talk about the spherical nature of the Earth relevant to the whole cosmos, So there's an amazing amount of knowledge that was lost in the Western world. So that's why when we print all the stuff we can print from Indian textbooks on your astrology chart, we're going to get a giant stack because those books weren't burned.
Right.
In the West, most of the books got burned, And in fact, we have in India, we have something called the Tajika system of astrology. The Tajika are the Persians, is what they used to call the Persians. And that's a perfectly preserved Persian system of astrology, just like the Greek and Persian astrology used 2,500 years ago, which developed into modern Western astrology. And we have that in India too. So we have everything that's in Western astrology in India, somewhere in some book, plus things that got burnt in the West. And I think these things were available to the Western astrologers a long time ago. But this knowledge got lost. And then different cultures choose to use different techniques based on the need of that culture and forget other techniques.
Yes.
And so astrology is in a constant state of flux. It's like nutrition. Depending on what the people are eating as a primary diet, we need different medical programs for them. We need different medical applications, different medical therapies, right? Like we need we're in an age where people eat a lot of grains. We're going to need a completely different medical system than an age where people are eating mostly fruits and vegetables.
Uh-huh.
And with astrology, it's the same. Depending on what's what's going on in the culture psyche, we need completely different astrology techniques. And that's why different cultures have preserved and used different techniques compared to other ones.